Cars are rolling at Daytona International Speedway. The track is open for NASCAR Sprint Cup Series practice for the Gatorade Duel at Daytona that you will see live here on Speed tomorrow. It is a beautiful day in Daytona Beach. Not a cloud in the sky, except a few to the west. 76 degrees. Tomorrow it will be 80 in the grandstands when we run the duel. But there is quite a breeze here. 20-mile-an-hour gusts, white caps on Lake Lloyd inside the back straightaway as the cars roll out for practice. Hi everybody, Mike Joy, Larry McReynolds, Jeff Hammond with you, and here's what we know so far. 43 cars will start the Daytona 500. 39 of those names are known now that pole qualifying is completed. So Larry, let's first deal with the 39 drivers who are going to be in the Great American Race. What's their agenda here?
Well, this is the first time they've been on the racetrack with these cars since we qualified on Sunday, because the track was closed yesterday and on Monday. But Mike, I think all of the cars, but especially those 39 cars that know they're in the 500, they're going to walk the tightrope in these 2 one-hour practice sessions, trying to find the balance between a good driving race car and a fast race car. We saw in the Budweiser shootout, having a fast race car wasn't necessarily the way to go once the tires started sliding around. So I think that's going to be the big thing, and that's tough because to make it drive better, you may have to give a little bit of speed up.
Now, Jeff, 17 teams are looking for only 4 positions left in the starting field, and we'll find out who those 17 or who those 4 will be tomorrow. What are they up to in this session?
What they're up to right now, Mike, is the fact that they've got to figure out who they can work with to get that opportunity to get one of those 2 positions in both of these races that are coming up tomorrow. So that means if I'm in that second duel, for example, like a guy like Boris said, I want to find someone that I can race with that's in that race. I don't need to be messing with the guys that are in the first race. I could get confused. I could find out that maybe when I run, for example, with maybe a guy like Jeff Gordon, that my car is extremely fast, but maybe Jeff's in the first race. So you have to be smart enough to know who you're racing and kind of like get a battle plan. And I think during these practice sessions, that's what a lot of these teams are going to be doing, looking for that ideal dance partner. And, oh, by the way, I just want to tell you one thing, Larry. Daryl may disagree with you about the fact you got to give up some speed to be able to get a good handle.
All I know is we better roll these sleeves up. We got work to do.
We got work to do.
2 hours of practice. We'll be with you from now until noon Eastern and back with you again at 2 p.m. to 3 Eastern time. Our Toyota track description: Daytona International Speedway, built and opened in 1959. And the tri-oval and the oval course for the stock cars just as it was then. 2.5 miles around, 31-degree banking, 18 in the tri-oval. The track configuration has not changed since this track was built. Now, let's concentrate on those 17 drivers for a moment who are trying to get into the 500. We do know that Bill Elliott, Tony Stewart, Travis Kvapil are in on speed. We know that Terry Labonte is in the race by virtue of the Champions Provisional. But those drivers are locked in, but not those positions. Any one of those 4 could race their way in and be one of the 2 highest finishing drivers among the go-or-go-homers in their Gatorade race and make the field that way. Should that happen, there are 4 drivers waiting at the back door to get into the field on qualifying speed, and there they are in order of speed: Regan Smith, Joe Nemechek, Boris Said, and Scott Riggs. Those are the only drivers of the 17 who can elevate themselves into the field on speed. Everyone of the 17, and here they are, have the opportunity to race their way in on Thursday. You have to be one of the 2 highest finishers in your Gatorade duel among the go-or-go-homers.
And what's important about that, that's where those guys can't get greedy tomorrow. All that matters, it doesn't matter if you finish 10th or 15th, as long as you're one of those top 2 guys that's not already locked into the Daytona 500. And honestly, Mike, that's where the crew chief and the spotter really, they have to be on their game to make that driver aware you're okay where you're at. Don't worry about trying to get out front or try to worry about passing race cars.
So just how many scenarios are out there, Larry? Probably what?
Lots.
a million scenarios.
Bottom line, finish as high as you can and see where it falls.
Here's our Budweiser shootout runner-up, Jamie McMurray, who led the white flag lap and got beat to the checker, Chris Devoto.
Well, Mike, you might think that Jamie McMurray and his team would be hanging their head after that almost win in the Bud Shootout. Not the case at all. I talked to crew chief Donnie Wingo just a few moments ago. He said he is ecstatic. He is having so much fun down here, and if they can get this car to handle as close or even close to how the car ran Saturday night, they will be in good shape. What is the goal for Jamie in this practice? Just to stay out of trouble. He plans on this first run to just stay down on the bottom. Let's go over to the other side of the garage and Matt Yoko.
Chris, it's already been a very productive and impressive Speed Weeks 2009 for the 2008 Daytona 500 winner, Ryan Newman. His team debuted in qualifying, turned in the third fastest time. They'll be on the outside of the front row for their dual 150 on Thursday. Now for this session, Ryan and his U.S. Army team have a couple of different agendas. They're just trying to make the race car handle. He and crew chief Tony Gibson sat down and worked up a couple different ideas for this session. And as far as the productive part of Speed Weeks, Monday night, for the first time ever, Ryan Newman added something to his racing resume that had been missing: a win in a NASCAR Tour Type Modified. At New Smyrna, he went to Victory Lane, driving Kevin Bonomanion's 7NY with a Tom Baldwin Sr. paint scheme. And they ran last night, had another great night, but they're having fun in Speed Weeks 2009. Mike?
One young driver who is not having fun is Joey Logano in the 20. Jeff?
Yeah, Mike, I was watching the 20 car, and he looked like he was dancing around an awful lot. He went off in turn 3, and all of a sudden the car got sideways, and up into the outside wall he went. About the same place that wrecked at the very beginning of the Budweiser Shootout. So again, the 20 car and Joe Logano are having some trouble here early on as far as this practice is concerned.
This is, I believe, his third encounter with the wall this week.
Yeah, he's definitely got his hands full, and he's bringing the car back to pit road. I think they're going to be able to effectively repair it. But Larry, to me, the biggest thing is this young man's confidence. Again, he's got his hands full out there, and he's been fighting his car ever since the first practice for the Budweiser Shootout.
Yeah, he's been quickest. He had run 6 laps so far in his practice. And Mike, going back to what I talked about at the top of the show, finding that fine line between a fast race car and a good driving race car. And you don't have a lot of tools to work with. You're pretty much locked into the rear springs and the rear shocks because NASCAR mandates the rate of the rear springs and the rear shocks. What you have to work with mainly, front springs, front shocks, and front anti-roll bar. And what we've seen all week is these guys are pulling the front of the car down so hard and keeping it down because that speed, it just makes the car like it's on the edge the way you have to drive it. We saw right there, Joey drove down into 3 and 4. The car kicked out and got loose, and it walked up the racetrack and got into the wall.
So Logano goes to the garage. And at the top of the group are 3 Dodges. Remember, they finished in 6 of the top 8 spots in the 500 last year. Casey Kane, Kurt Busch, and Sam Hornish have the 3 fastest practice speeds. As we look at Hornish now, racing with Casey Mears in the 07 and Greg Biffle's 16. And Martin Truex in the 1. He's our pole sitter. You saw him headed for the garage there along with Sadler. Martin has thousands of new race fans in Georgia. Think about that one, and I'll explain it in a little bit. And so does Kurt Busch and Mark Martin.
I will have to think about that one. But back to the Dodge story, you're exactly right, Mike. And when I look at our qualifying sheet from Sunday, the fastest Dodge in qualifying was Reed Sorensen in the 43 car. He was 28th quickest. It's almost a replay of a year ago. We only had 1 Dodge in the top 20 for Daytona 500 a year ago, and that was Patrick Carpentier that had to qualify on time or race his way in. So I guess the moral of the story, we know that a lot of the Dodges are working with a new nose that has a little more front grip, more downforce, but I think the Dodges are looking like they're in the same boat as a year ago. They don't have the ability to run that fast lap qualifying, but they're working on getting their cars to drive good.
3 of those Dodges, Casey Kane, Kurt Busch, and Sam Hornish, lead practice. Speed's presentation of NASCAR Sprint Cup practice brought to you by Toyota. For the latest in Toyota racing information, visit toyotaracing.com. Toyota moving forward. By Old Spice, the official deodorant of NASCAR. And by Ask.com. Get the answer to all your racing questions at Ask.com, the official search engine of NASCAR. No change in the top 5 as we're 11, almost 12 minutes into this Sprint Cup practice. Okay, so Wida Martin Truex, Kurt Busch, and Mark Martin have a whole bunch of new fans are in and around Atlanta, or let's say Hampton, Georgia.
I have not a clue.
They've got the greatest ticket promotion I've heard of, and they're running it for the 2nd year in a row. Monday after the Daytona 500, whatever car number wins the 500, they will put 1,000 tickets on sale, limit 2 per person, and the price in dollars is the winning car number.
Wow.
Wow.
So last year those tickets were $12
Yeah,
a piece.
they did
Ryan
that
Newman.
last year, yeah.
So, Carl, you have no fans. You have no fans in Georgia this week. I'm sorry. Thank you, Barry Landis. You're absolutely right. But what a great promotion.
That is awesome. And
you know, that is the kind of creative thinking that's going to help us get through tough times. And I'll bet there'll be a line of race fans there, depending on who wins, of course, to take advantage. Now, if David Rudiman wins the race, I forgot about Rudiman. Thank you, Barry. If Rudiman wins, are those 1,000 tickets free, 2 per person?
or if Regan Smith wins, are they a penny?
Well, 01 is still $1.
Okay,
01
so
is
there,
$1.
we got two cars that'd be $1. Okay.
Well, there's no decimal point in front of the 01.
Okay.
Artie. Maybe there should be.
That's debatable.
Well, while we debate, Krista will tell you something useful.
Well, I don't know about that, but I'll
We're
give you
counting on you.
a report from the garage at the very least. Regan Smith, of course, one of those guys who has not been sleeping well the last few nights, one of the guys who has to race his way in, and he was so close in qualifying. One of the fastest times. In fact, in duel number 2, he's second only to Travis Quapple of the Go or Go Home guys. Quapple, of course, locked in. Regan has not been out on the track yet. I just talked to him. He is sitting in his race car in the garage. I said, when are you going out? He said, I was hoping it was 5 minutes ago. He wants to get out there and get any laps he can just to get the feel and the handle, of course, of his race car.
You know, I like what this race team is doing this year, and it's a lot along the same lines as the Wood brothers, is they're taking the funding that they have and they're picking and choosing their races. They're not going to try to come here and race every single week. Bottom line is, if they have some good runs, then the sponsorships may come their way to pick it back up and run more races. But, you know, if you've got enough money to run 12 races, don't try to run 25 races. Run those 12 races and do the best job that you can at it.
Regan Smith's owner, Furniture Row, and sponsor, just opened up a Furniture Row right across I-95 from Daytona International Speedway. It's their first store in Florida. Why'd they pick Daytona Beach? This is where they race.
There you go. You know, Jeff, I don't know what your thinking is here, but I'm looking at our monitor here, and I'm seeing where David Reagan has run 15 laps. Brian Vickers has run 16 laps. Jeff Gordon, the 24 car, he's run 15. And I think if I was a crew chief of any of these race cars, whether it's top 35 or guys that has to race their way in, what I would want to do is, if the car's driving decent, run me 25 laps, run me 30 laps. Let's see where this thing goes once we burn the fuel down and the tires get some laps on them, because honestly, in the Budweiser shootout, we never got a long run the other night because we kept having cautions. But run me a long run to see where this car is going to go, which will give us a good measure and stick for tomorrow.
That's exactly what you'd like to be able to see again. We're talking about Brian Vickers, who's right at the moment heading this pack, being followed right there by the 99 of Carl Edwards. But the more laps you can put on that race car, the more information that can be given back to that team so they can get a better assessment of what we need to do for the final practice here today and headed into Thursday's races. So great indicators, and by this measure, at least early on, Brian Vickers must have a pretty comfortable ride to be able to run as well as he is right now, as many laps as he's got on his tires. Looking pretty good, top and to the bottom.
Michael Waltrip has poked up into the top 5 in practice speeds in this session. Bull Run is coming, and the only place to see it's right here on Speed. Our buddy Bill Goldberg takes 12 teams on a high-stakes road trip, and they'll have to make it through his challenges to have a shot at the 200 grand in cash and prizes. February 19th, there's Goldberg. Bull Run exclusively on Speed.
Don't have a lot of cars out there right now. We've got this pack here of about 8 or 9 cars down in turn 1 and 2. A lot of cars back in the garage area. Oh, Bill Elliott, that 21 car for the Wood brothers, they have been fast ever since they unloaded this race car. He was fastest in both practices on Saturday. I think they are ecstatic to qualify where they qualified 5th, and he's actually going to start on the outside of the front row in the first dual race, and the guy he'll be starting outside of will be the guy he's following, Martin Truex Jr. But I think they were ecstatic to qualify 5th, but I think they were disappointed because they felt like they had a shot at the pole. But I think what they didn't get greedy. If you go back a year or so ago, they got greedy and they burnt a gear up qualifying and ended up missing the show. And that's actually what happened to the 29 car, Kevin Harvick, who qualified way back in the 49th position on Sunday. They burnt the gear up because they got a little too aggressive with rear end grease.
Matt Kenseth is 7th on the practice chart. No change in the top 10. Recently, David Reagan just moved up to 11th on the board. So after Kenseth, it's McMurray, Mark Martin, and David Stremme.
Almost looked right there through 3 and 4. He got such a run on that 39 car, he had to jump back out of the throttle.
Well, the 23 of Mike Skinner was on the high side, and like he came in there a little bit quick, and all of a sudden he had to lift. You see the car kind of wiggle a little bit more and hit that bump in 3, and makes you wonder right there again, between the wind and between the roughness of this racetrack, you earn your keep every lap in this place.
Well, let's go downstairs and see what's going on with the Roush-Coutures. Here's Matt.
Greg Biffle has a Pepsi 400 now, Coke 400 trophy in his trophy case, now looking for a 500 win. Are we seeing the old Daytona trends come to life again? Is the track getting slicker?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, with this sunny, more warmer weather than we've seen, certainly the track's getting slicker. Same old Daytona. Trying to get the car to handle and, trying to get it to run on the bottom, the top, the middle. So it's a challenge. It's going to be a challenge.
Big event for you tonight.
Yeah, we are. We're having a great event tonight. A Greg Biffle Foundation, Ryan Newman and myself, and NASCAR Foundation doing a fundraising function for a local humane society here in Daytona Beach, and our two foundations benefit. So live silent auction, big event out in front of the Speedway tonight. We're really excited about it. Annual event. And we're glad to participate with the Frances and NASCAR and everybody to make a good event out of it.
Well, good luck tonight. From one pet lover to another, here's Chris Devoto.
All right, thank you very much, Matt. And Tony Stewart has brought his Office Depot Chevrolet into the garage. And Tony was out there for a while. He said, really, the only thing his car is missing, it's total overall grip. He said, it slides the nose in some spots on the track, but then just when I think that's the only problem, it loses the back end in spots. So really, all he's asking for is just total overall grip.
Now, if you watch the Budweiser shootout, that was the Old Spice car. For the 500, it's the Office Depot car. Stewart is one of a number of teams that will rotate or alternate sponsorships throughout the year to make ends meet. Some others, like the number 5 of Mark Martin, has an unlikely pairing of both major sponsors on the car for the 500. Kellogg's on the front, CarQuest in the back.
I tell you what, Mark Martin, known him for a long time, and I'm just not sure I've ever seen quite as much bounce in his step as he has right now. And he kind of supported that bounce on Sunday by bouncing to the outside of the front row, which will put him on the pole for the second dual race tomorrow.
Well, Larry, right now, I think what's impressive, he was 9th quickest in his practice session. He's run about 10 laps. So he knows the importance of getting the car to handle. He came very close just a couple of years ago winning this race, so he understands what kind of field he's looking for. So be interesting to watch Mark and see how he does during this remaining part of this practice session as well as the final one of the day.
Watching Matt Kenseth as those two came off turn 4 last time around, and Matt Kenseth had a little bit of the right side face to the wind here.
You have a little D-do coming off of 4.
Yeah, just a little control slide.
A little tail happy.
But we were talking about Joey Logano, and we talked about how rough this racetrack is. It's more like dips in it. And the problem, if your car is a little loose and you hit those dips, the car just gets looser. And I think that's a lot what happened to Joey Logano a while ago when he slapped the wall in 3 and 4. If your car's not turning or sliding the front tires, you hit the dips, it'll make the front slide more. So the dips or the bumps just magnify the handling characteristics that the race car actually has.
Halfway halfway through the first of 2 practice sessions today that you'll see on Speed. This one goes till noon, and the second one at 2 o'clock Eastern. Speed coverage of NASCAR Sprint Cup practice is brought to you by Old Spice, the official deodorant of NASCAR. And by Verizon Wireless. Call more people, use 0 minutes, only on America's largest mobile-to-mobile calling family, Verizon Wireless. No change in the top half dozen practice speeds. Still a lot of 2x2 drafting going on. Let's go down to the garage and meet the fastest man in Daytona today with Krista.
And Mike, he must have heard you calling his name because Casey Kane walking over to us now. Casey, you have the fast lap out there, but I know you were saying your car's a little tight. What do you guys need to do to get it exactly where you want it?
Well, I think the track's a bit slicker than it was the other night, so we just got to get the front tires to work a little bit better. It was all right. Speed-wise, you know, I kind of got a good draft and all that, but yeah, just center off, you just kind of lose the front end, and you definitely need it to be good there. That's where you make up your times off the corners, so we'll keep working on it. They're making some changes now. Usually, Kenny Francis, these guys, usually when we run good at Daytona, it's because of handling, so we'll get it.
All right, thanks, Casey. Matt?
And one guy who's been swapping back and forth between manufacturers for Speed Weeks, Robbie Gordon. So you're done for this session. How's the car?
Our car's pretty good. Blistering right front tire a little bit. We went out and ran 15 straight laps, so we're done for the session. Pretty much driving like it did at Talladega, and we had a shot at winning last time we were there. I know it's a different manufacturer, but as far as the setup and stuff like that, it's all the same. You know, it's showing 15, 20 degrees hot at the rear, and it's blistering the right front a little bit. So I think tires are going to be a little bit of an issue. With that said, we'll put ours away for this session. Hopefully some more rubber gets put down on the racetrack, and we'll get ready for the afternoon session.
All right, thanks, Robbie.
Thank you.
Now, Gordon ran a Dodge in the Budweiser shootout because that's the make he amassed enough points with last year to qualify for the shootout. If he'd made his change to Toyota a week earlier, he would not have been in the race. So that was his last race for Dodge. Now he's in a Toyota for 09.
And you know, that's interesting about blistering the right front. And what he means by blistering the right front, it's almost no difference than if you overheat and blister your skin. Normally these Goodyear tires, they will blister somewhere probably around 300 degrees Fahrenheit is when they'll start to develop actually a blister on it. But that is something that a lot of teams faced last year. You would think if you're blistering a right front tire that your car would not be turning. You're overworking the right front tire. But what he meant, when they look at their tire sheet, it tells them the balance of the car. The right rear is showing hotter than the right front, which tells them that the chassis is actually loose. Now that is actually a blister right there on that tire. That's exactly what that is right there. But I think that's what's going on with what a lot of these guys are doing with the setups of these race cars, is you may still have a loose race car, but because they're taking these front tires and just driving them in the ground and holding them there, I think that's where you overwork the right front tire regardless of if the car is loose or tight.
Well, and look at that whole edge. You see it's a different corner on that edge than the rest of the tire. Different color, you know, showing that there's been excessive heat there. Can adjustments, front end alignment, geometry help that?
I would be looking at the toe as well as the camber on this particular tire and see if we could kind of like take a little bit of that away from it. If you'll look, you can almost see the center line of this tire is still here in this area. So it's a matter of, I think you need to work on the front end, because it almost sounds like, Larry, like the whole car is almost too stiff and it's sliding across the racetrack and heating up the whole tire package. So it'd be interesting to be able to look at the tire temperature sheet itself and see exactly what they're telling you. But this could be, you know, a indicator of things maybe to come tomorrow. So it'll be interesting to see, because we got a lot of guys right now got a lot of laps on this racetrack, in particular guys like Jeff Burton. He's run like 31 laps so far, or 22 laps.
And I think Casey Kane made an important point. The sun is out. It's midday. The track is a lot slicker than it was the other night in the Budweiser shootout, which is the last time that these cars were running nose to tail, swapping positions back and forth.
But I think this is going to be the conditions that we have to deal with during these dual races. So that's the reason you've got to get out there and you've got to make your car drive good. Now, one thing that Robbie also commented, Robbie Gordon, is the more rubber we put down, is there's always hope that will help the tire wear. Now, one thing that I do know that the tire company did with the right side tire this year, we saw a little bit of this blistering last year. So what they did, they took a little bit of tread off the tire, a little bit of gauge, a little thinner rubber, because the more rubber that's there holds more heat. So they made the rubber thinner, which will dissipate the heat a little better. Denny Hamlin didn't lift it. He's wide open right now.
No change in the top 10 fastest practice speeds. Next Wednesday, a new high school rivalry is brewing, and the score will be settled on the drag strip. Drag Race High returns to speed for an all-new season. Two schools face off for an unforgettable showdown. Drag racing champs Clay Milliken and Cruz Pedregon are the guest judges. Season premiere of Drag Race High is Wednesday, 10 p.m. Eastern, only on Speed. Well, we've been telling you what to expect and what we're observing and what it all means. Why don't we just sit back for this segment and let you folks at home enjoy the sounds of speed. Ryan Newman, that 39 car, maybe an engine issue on that 39, and the caution will wave.
Yeah,
not yet. Track's still green.
Get ready to get back into it there in the backstretch, and it just jumped.
Now, NASCAR's one engine rule is in effect modified for this race. Let's check with Matt.
Mike, Ryan Newman just had a quick conversation with Tony Gibson, his crew chief, and he said, I simply rolled out of the gas, got ready to get back into it, and the motor just completely blew. Something bad in the bottom end of this motor, making his way back to his garage stall. The crew guys now getting ready to make the motor change, getting ready to change out all the lines. Luckily, though, right at the end of practice, they got a lot of work in so far during this first session today.
Couple of stories here. Remember, this is the Hendrick engine package. That's the engines that Stewart-Haas used. But Mike, you're exactly right. What NASCAR allows these teams here during speed weeks is after the dual race, you are allowed one engine change as long as you have that 500 race engine in there by the final practice on Saturday. So what this will mean, remember, Ryan Newman qualified third. He's scheduled to start on the outside of the front row in Gatorade Dual Race number 2. He will have to go to the rear of the field to start that dual race. But I've got to believe if you had to lose an engine, this is when to lose it, because these guys will get an opportunity to get their other engine in there and get back out there in a practice in about 2 hours.
And Newman is guaranteed in the Daytona 500.
Because the 39 car has the 66 cars points from 2008.
That was one of the two cars run by what was then Haas Automation Racing and is now Stewart-Haas.
And then Tony Stewart, who's the 14 car, has the 70 car points, but that car was outside the top 35. But the good news for Tony, he would have the most previous championship provisional if he indeed needs it. We know he won't need it here.
About 15 minutes left in this opening practice for tomorrow's Gatorade Duel at Daytona on Speed. Track is green once again. About 14 minutes left in this practice session. Another practice coming up at 2 p.m. Eastern. You'll also see that one right here on Speed. Derek Cope out in front of this pack. Jeff Gordon swings to the inside. and passes with Jamie McMurray in tow.
Just look at that 44 car, A.J. Allmendinger, driving for Richard Petty Motorsports. Had a great run in the Budweiser shootout the other night. Ended up finishing 5th. I think that's going to be a car that will have to race his way in. I'm just not sure that the speed of that 44 car is going to get him in. He was 35th quickest in qualifying on Sunday.
And Larry, he's one of the guys that had a really good run in the Budweiser shootout. I think got some confidence out of that deal. Wound up finishing, what was it, 4th and 5th. So it's right now. I think that's what you're needing, is having some confidence coming in here that you can get the job done. And presently, you got 3 Dodges all lined up there. Elliott Sadler at the head of the pack, being followed by Kurt Busch and then A.J. Allmendinger. Once again, making a pretty good run on the outside to take the lead of this pack.
Now, of the Go homers, Mike Skinner has the fastest practice lap in this session among the cars that must race their way in tomorrow in the Gatorade duels. And the driver who is second on that part of the timesheet is with Krista.
That's right. Window net just going up on Jeremy Mayfield's Toyota, and this is the thrash zone down here. This is the part of the garage where all the drama is taking place, because these guys know they have 1 shot left for that last ticket into the Daytona 500. Jeremy Mayfield really describing his car with one simple word: tight. They changed the right front spring. Tony Furr back with Jeremy Mayfield on this car. So 2 veterans, Jeremy Mayfield, Tony Furr, a lot of experience. They're hoping that experience places them in Sunday's Great American Race.
You know, Jeff, it almost sounds like no matter what we come here with, no matter what car, no matter what rules, no matter what, Daytona always ends up always with the same characteristics. The car, the more you burn the fuel off, the more you put laps on the tires, the thing wants to start sliding those front wheels, especially off turn 2. That's always been the case for years.
It's always been that way, Larry, and you're right, because when you come off of turn 2, the transition off of 2, it just kind of flattens out there, and if the car doesn't turn like it's supposed to, you can eat up a lot of that outside wall. So having a lift off that corner can really affect your speed down the back straightaway. So it's very important that you work on all this, because the later you run, the longer you go, that's where it's really going to start to show up. And when you need to have that speed at the end of this qualifying run, we're looking here right now at the 36 car, Scott Riggs, and man, he's making some pretty bold moves in this final part of this practice session. And he's one of the guys that's got to race his way in. So he's going to put this car in harm's way a lot more than a lot of these other drivers.
And for good reason, Jeff, because I think the easiest way to explain it to folks at home, or the easiest one I've thought of, is there's 2 ways to get into the show. Come in the front door or come in the back door. If you are one of the 2 highest finishing cars among the Go homers in your Gatorade duel, the front door opens, you're in the Daytona 500. If you're not, you can fall back on your speed, come in the back door, and still get one of those 4 positions at the tail end of the field. Now, of those cars, Riggs had the 4th fastest qualifying speed. However, of the 4 drivers right now that are locked in on speed or Champions Provisional, Terry Labonte's car has not been fast in practice. We anticipate Labonte is likely to need the Champions Provisional to get in the Daytona 500. That means there's only 3 spots available through the back door on speed. And right now, Regan Smith, Joe Nemechek, and Boris Said are the drivers in those 3 positions most likely to move up and come in the back door to make the Daytona 500. We'll try to make it all clear for you by tomorrow.
But I think Tommy Baldwin and Scott Riggs know that speed's probably not safe.
Right.
They just got to block that out. Right. They've got to go out there, get this car driving good, and try their best to be one of those top 2 finishers of the Go homers in their duel race.
Right. That is their best and maybe only chance.
Well, the thing is right now, control your own destiny, you might say. Take charge of this thing and go up there and go get it, and not have to worry about something or somebody else, helping you get here. Go help yourself.
Now, to simplify the dual races as far as the Go homers, and I think this is great what NASCAR does, they don't put more in one race than the other. There will be 10 in one race, there will be 11 in the other. That kind of puts everybody on equal ground, and it's the same for the top 35. There's pretty much 18 in one race and 17 in another, the way it works.
Nine minutes to go in this first of 2 practice sessions for tomorrow's Gatorade Duel. Speed's presentation of Sprint Cup practice brought to you by Toyota. For the latest in Toyota racing info, visit toyotaracing.com. Toyota, moving forward. by Old Spice, the official deodorant of NASCAR. And by Bank of America, the official bank of NASCAR, where you can get a choice of NASCAR drivers on your check cards and credit cards.
This practice is about to come to a close, and it's been pretty uneventful. The only situation we had was Ryan Newman losing the engine, but this was Bill Elliott up there in that 21 car, again coming off turn 4.
Whoa!
That's about as close as you can come and not actually touch it. Car just kind of in that four-wheel skate or slide, or as our boss David Hill likes to call it, a drift.
He was definitely drifting and holding his breath at the same time.
Let's see, where's Elliott on the speed chart?
He's 39th right now, guys. He's run 21 laps. So they're putting some laps on that number 21 car. A little bit surprising. I thought they might be a little bit more on the conservative side.
Bottom's got some grip to it, but the top off a 4 don't.
Yeah.
We concur, Mr. Elliott.
Yeah.
Good point.
The pictures bear out the assessment.
But that practice coming up in 2 hours, that will be final practice for the Gatorade Dual races tomorrow. It'll be right here on Speed. And we were just talking during break. I'm sure some of the most intense work in that garage area right now is on that 20 car, trying to get it back together to get Joey Logano back out there for that final 55 minutes of practice.
There's Greg Zipadelli and his team.
These cars, body-wise, I mean, we've seen it for a year and a half. They're just so durable. You know, I don't see a lot of damage, and now the black and the red flag will wave to end this practice. Biggest thing I'm sure they had to go through was the rear end housing bent, was the trailing arm bent, where ball joints bent on the right side.
I feel so much better.
The 4 happiest fellas in this session are Mike Skinner, Jeremy Mayfield, Scott Riggs, and Mike Wallace. They were the fastest of the Go or Go Home crowd. The NASCAR Camping World Truck Series hits the track next, and we'll be back with more Sprint Cup Series practice at 2 p.m. Another truck practice at 5. So lots of on-track activity today here on Speed from Daytona.
So Richard Childress got a little bounce in his step.
Congratulations to Casey Kane. He wins practice number 1 for tomorrow's Gatorade Duels. Trucks are next.